Welcome to the Chase Merrell podcast. I am your host, Chase Merrell, and we are all about helping people get freed up from what's holding them back so they can build up who they were made to be. If you want to help us continue to make an impact with this podcast week in and week out, consider joining our new Patreon community. For as little as a cup of coffee a month, you can be a part of helping us get the message and mission of the podcast out to more people more effectively. This is a way that we can come together as a community, and you'll get access to behind the scenes stuff, additional resources and content, and so much more for just as little as $5 a month. You can head over to chasemerrill.com and click Patreon to jump in and get started. Now let's jump into today's conversation. Well, here we go.
Yes.
Got my friend and my counselor, psychologist, Dr. Jeff Wagaman, with me today on the podcast.
Hi, Chase.
Welcome, Dr. Jeff. This is cool, man. We don't actually, most of the time, there's a screen in our world, usually in between,
Yes.
So we've had a few in person, but
Right.
pretty cool to have you be a part of this podcast in person and just in general. This is something I've been calling the 52 Project, and, we've talked about different things over this last year, but 52 people who've made an impact on my life, having a conversation with them over each week of the year. And you've been on my list since the beginning of the year, based on my trying to get ideas of what that would look like. And just super thankful for the opportunity, because I know you're a busy man and you got a lot going on, but to make space is super grateful for. So here we go. This is part of how I'd love to kind of open, is for people that have no clue. There's going to be people that know you based on just the overlap of people that are connected to different spheres, maybe that we've been connected to in different ways. But for those that have no clue, who are you in a nutshell? Where are you at? What are you doing? Just so people could get an idea.
Well, Chase, first, I'm glad to be on your list
Yeah.
and appreciate that. And obviously, that whole thing that you just said is all confidential as far as I'm concerned. So
Sure.
nobody knows that I've ever seen you. And
Sure.
so that's how they know now.
Yeah.
But it's been an honor to see you and work with you. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm Dr. Jeff Wagaman. I'm a psychologist. I've been a psychologist since 1992. Went to Washington State University and got my degree. Then I joined the military, and I was a psychologist in the military for 5 years during Desert Storm and other things that went on.
Wow. That
was quite an experience. And then I moved here in 1994, opened up a practice, and have been here now. This year will be 30 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Truthfully, it's been a journey, and started out with just myself, and then slowly but surely added people, and now I think we have close to 20 people working for us, and
That's
so
awesome.
it's been great. And it's always kind of been a dream that I had, but it's been a reality now, and it's one of those things where it's at right now. I'm really thankful, grateful to be where we are, impacting people, but also just the people that we work with as well. Both of those, and so it's been a great thing, great journey.
30 years here with a practice that, obviously has grown and expanded, and you've been able to multiply the impact because of the amount of people that could be on the team and grow into those spaces and places that you're not having to be the only person that's doing it all. And that's really, I know how much of a need in our world, just the world of counseling and therapy and psychologists and things that people need more than ever. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I can say that or not, being a 32-year-old, but nonetheless, just the impact that you're able to make obviously is huge across the landscape. There's nobody that's removed from needing a good counselor or a good therapist, a good psychologist, somebody that could walk with them. And whether you've had a lot of success or you've struggled, everybody could come to a point where they're like, man, I got to walk through something with somebody who actually knows how to help me walk through it.
And that's been an honor of mine, in that, because usually when I see people, it's when they're walking through something difficult.
Sure.
And so for me, it's been an honor, and kind of how I look at it is an honor to be invited in to walk with people as they work through maybe some of the most difficult things in their life.
Yeah.
And so it's not a burden.
Right.
It really is a privilege
Right.
to do that and be there with them and walk through that journey.
Yeah.
So.
And that's when I think about the way we got connected. I had heard about this practice in the Olympia, Thurston County area, this counseling practice that you over these 30 plus years or whatever, you've established a pretty reputable, credible, impactful business that is impacting a lot of people. So I had already heard about that world, but it wasn't until I had hit a pretty tough point in my life where somebody that I loved and cared about passed away a little bit unexpectedly, and there were some pieces of that really kind of began to bring me into a place of stuff I had never hit that kind of trauma or loss or grief before. Grief and loss. Trauma came a little bit later. So that was one part, but then the other part was actually your daughter at Living Water. When I first came, she was in a role with the district with Foursquare, Christina, and was trying to just support youth pastors and say, what can I do to, she was amazing. Just like, what can I do to support you and help you guys win in ministry? And so she met with me, and it was around halfway through our conversation or so, she said something to the effect of like, I think I was telling her what I was kind of struggling with, when it came to the ministry space. And she just kind of like really lovingly but clearly was like, have you ever considered, the world of ADHD or having any of that, maybe getting tested for that? Because what I was communicating to her from her world sounded like it could be some of that. To which I was like, no, I mean, people have joked about that before, but no. And then that was that. She said, well, if you ever do, my dad's a counselor, and he actually specializes in that world, and it may be something you would want to look into, because I was stepping into a new leadership responsibility. So I began to see I hadn't carried the weight of leading people and needing to have my stuff together like I was doing for the first time. And so that was that. And then it was probably 2.5 years later that I began to just absolutely hit some walls that I couldn't get through. And I'd never hit those walls before that I couldn't get through. And then some of the loss and grief kind of all began to compound. And I finally was like, that thought that Christina had shared back 2-3 years ago was like, maybe I need to just explore this more. Because I think I had just had this belief that wasn't for somebody like me. I was doing fine. I'm leading. I'm impacting. It feels like, and yet here I am finding myself feeling like I'm now letting a lot more people down than normal because they're depending on me to focus and see things through, and so that's what led me into your world to actually like get tested for adult ADHD. And this whole conversation, in large part, when part of how I hope people will hear and receive it is getting to hear a part of your story and, why you're even in this space as a counselor, as a psychologist, and doing what you're doing. And then the specialty world, or I don't know what you would call it. Like there's an emphasis with ADHD that, it seems like you have a passion for, or maybe just more experience with helping people. And so this is the first time I've really shared with my world this part of my journey. And it's been such a unique experience to accept and embrace, and then begin to learn how to grow through the reality that as I walked through those tests and did all those things was pretty clear that I did indeed have ADHD. And I just never thought that was me. And now that I'm about a year and a half into that world and walking it out, I recognize it's not something that just came out of nowhere. It's actually something that I probably have been, I've lived with and have adapted to, but then just hit a wall. And that's really what part of our beginning of journeying through. You really begin to start helping me understand what this world could look like. Do you see people at 30
all the time
come in like for the first time, and they're like,
first time, for sure. And I think that, this whole ADHD thing, I kind of we have to do continuing education every
Sure.
year, right? And so I remember back in probably 1994 when I was starting, and I had already been doing testing, ADHD testing for children and adolescents, never for adults. And I, as my practice was growing and changing, I became more working with adults instead of children. And I thought, and there was a big debate during that time: is this ADHD thing even real? Is this just bad behavior? Is this
Right.
just poor parenting?
Sure.
Is that all that thing? And I thought, that's a good question. I need to go find out and get research and get some continuing ed in this area. So I went to some of the guru guys in ADHD, and that was one of their conferences was, hey, is this even real? And they were doing brain scans on people, and they're looking at it, and it was very apparent at the end of that conference that ADHD people's brains work differently. When they try to concentrate, their brain literally shuts down. And when normal people concentrate, their frontal lobe lights up. And when ADHD people try to concentrate, shuts down, and they can't focus. They can't pay attention. They can't complete the task.
Yeah.
And so it's very discouraging to try to get things done. And they eventually do.
Right.
But oftentimes it's related to fear. So
Right.
we'll have people that will procrastinate, and they'll try to get things done. They want to get that sermon done, whatever, and they start on Monday, but they can't make it work until Saturday. And then the fear brings up serotonin levels in the brain to where they're better, and now they can focus, pay attention. But what a way to do life, right? Last minute, just frustrating.
Yeah.
So
And in that world that you just described, I recognized once we really started to walk this out. I started to learn more that this has been a part of my life from, like, I think about the way I operated in elementary school, middle school, and in high school. It was I felt like chronic, constant, and there was always this wrestling of like, what is wrong with me? I don't want to do this. I don't want to procrastinate and wait. And yet I would find time after time after time, somehow, some way, I basically would figure out a way to get it done. Because of that, back against the wall, there's no other option but go forward. And then whatever it was that I waited until the last minute to do, I would accomplish adequately enough for the most part that it was rewarded with some form of, okay, that's tolerable. And so what happened, I think, over time was I grew in a familiarity with being able to do that and adapt to that. And I think what happened when I'm looking back at what took place when I just couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't manage that anymore.
Right.
I have 3 kids at that time. I have 4 now, but had 3, and COVID probably was in the middle, a little bit of that leadership shifts in my life. Like I think you had told me at one point, when you do see this in young adults or early 30s, mid 30s, late 20s, it's like there's at times like a shift in maybe in career or something like that, where they're having to step up and step into something that they maybe haven't had the same level of carrying before.
Right. They move up in authority, they get promoted, and now they really have to pay attention and focus and get things done and complete tasks and all that stuff. And that old way of doing things, procrastinating, waiting till the last minute, all that stuff just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And so, so in my testing of adults, most of the time we see ADHD as adults, ADHD without the hyperactive part, because there's 2 parts, main parts, and people don't
that piece for
know that a lot of times. There's actually 4 parts, but 4 types. But the 2 main types that we see are ADHD with hyperactivity and ADHD without hyperactivity. So they have all the symptoms of problems with focusing, paying attention, easily distracted, problems completing things, impulsivity, all that stuff, except they don't have the hyperactive part. They aren't the ones running around the classroom, getting in trouble, all that stuff. They can sit down. They feel like it oftentimes running around, but they don't. And so they don't cause problems, and they get missed. And so they go through, they make it through, they get through school. They even oftentimes can get through college, especially if they're pretty intelligent. These problems are causing them problems, but not enough to where they go, I can't do this. And so they get through college. I've had some get through graduate school. But there's always oftentimes this feeling that I hear all the time, maybe you would concur, I don't know, but that they don't feel like they're reaching their potential.
Yeah.
They don't feel like I'm not doing as good as I could.
Yeah.
as well as I could. And
Yeah.
so they're going, they just feel that. And then when they get on the medication,
Right.
and
Right.
we put them on the medication because it's a biological deal. It doesn't look biological,
Right.
but it's biological. You're born with it. You don't catch it.
Yeah.
You're dealing with it your whole life. We see it a lot, school problems, but then when we get in a career, then they eventually get to the point where I'm not coping well, I'm not doing well, and then they get the testing, and then they get on the medication, and then sometimes they need some skill training. And two, they never did learn how to study, they never did learn how to do certain things because they couldn't.
Sure.
Now they can, but they might need to learn some skills. But now they can measure up, they can do their job, they can focus, they can pay attention. And so I've seen, I've tested thousands of people probably, but hundreds of times I've heard people say, this has changed my life, and that this is a game changer. A lot of successful people go pretty far with ADHD, but they just can't quite get to where they want to be.
Yeah.
They always feel like they're falling a little short. But we do see these common threads of lifelong problems with focus, paying attention, getting distracted, and not be able to get things done, not always paying attention to what people are saying, feeling like they're kind of space cadets.
Not time management, but time management. But there's something else. There's another phrase that the concept of time is. There's just that. At least for me, my wife, she'll listen to this. I'm sure people that know me, like that's been a pretty evident part of, and I've always just felt this sense of like, there's something wrong with me. I just maybe I'm that irresponsible, to some degree to not. But so much of the time, it was just a complete inability to really get a good picture of what time. But to the point that you made about life change, man, I think the whole conversation in the world of mental health, I think is still significant. There's been significant, I think, progress in just people's greater understanding and willingness to kind of see that there maybe is more than just what we've thought before. But it still has a lot of taboo around it. It still has a lot of stigma, right? And so here I am as a I'm just gonna be real, right? I'm as a pastor.
Right.
I've been a pastor in a ministry my whole life, and I think that my mentality around just the world of mental health or medication or emotional issues and behavioral whatever, all of that for the most part, I have seen through the lens of that's not me, that's other people that just don't have enough discipline or self-control. It's just been such an incorrect lens, and I had a conversation on this podcast months ago with a family member who was talking about anxiety and some of those things. And it was one of the first times, in their journey, I saw that world. But this was one where I just thought ADHD seems like it's an excuse for laziness or lack of discipline. I'm not lazy. I'm not going to, right. There was this sense of that's for other people. That's not me. And it took a lot of humbling from the Lord. It took a lot of just realities of hitting some walls that I couldn't maneuver around. And then when I officially kind of got tested and we walked that out, and the thought was let's try medication. I was leery. I think there was the faith Christian side of my world was like, you don't need that, or you shouldn't need to depend on that in order to walk this out. That was the initial piece that I think I wrestled with. Or what would people think? It seems like that would be something that if they found out like you were wrestling with that in that way, like it would just, it would feel like that's not a very, pastorally thing to even communicate like this. But what shifted everything was beginning the process of the medication. And I gave this example when I first started taking it, this might help for people that have no clue what this is like. But like before taking medication to help with the ADHD, when I would be trying to focus on something that I was trying to get done and accomplish or complete, it would most oftentimes feel like my brain was sitting in traffic in Southern California or Seattle at 5 p.m. on a Friday, and there's just stop and go. There wasn't any movement. Like I couldn't, and I'm frustrated because I'm trying to figure out which lane's going to open up a little bit so I can just go a little faster, get to the destination. And it just was stuck, and I'm frustrated, and there's nowhere to go. And then when I took the medication, started going on that journey, it was like my brain was driving at like 2 a.m, open lanes on the freeway. No one was in the way. I could go the speed limit or just go and not have to worry about, I could just go. And it was crazy. I'd never had that kind of a vision of what was even possible in the way that I could focus or move forward. And it began to change my life because of all of the snowball domino subsequent impacts that it made. And I had this sense of like, gosh dang, I wish that I had pressed into this world earlier.
Well, and at your age, I mean, I think I always hear people say, I wish I would have done this earlier, but I see people that are in their 50s, I saw one lady in her 70s. No offense. I thought, why are we even doing this?
Sure.
But, she wanted to do it. And now that I'm getting close to that age, I go, now I see why. But, but I think that, it's real. I mean, I was kind of, making sure. I was kind of doubtful too. I go like, maybe this is some of this, and obviously there are people out there that are lazy and they're not ADHD. Sure. But I think when we diagnose somebody who actually has this condition, it's a real condition, and it really does impact our ability to focus. They can't do it.
Yeah.
And so when they try to get out there and say, hey, this time I'm going to write that paper starting 2 weeks ahead, their brain is going to just not be up for it. Yeah. And so, but once they're on medication, now they can do it, and they can function, and they can get more done, and then they can feel like, hey, I can achieve my potential.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy doing it just because it's not that complicated, right, and how helpful it is to people. And when they come back and they go, this has really been incredibly helpful, and then I see them later or hear about what's going on, and they have a different world experience of career, and affects their relationships. It's all that stuff. The other thing, you mentioned is that oftentimes before people come in and before they get tested, and when we do the testing, I try to do testing and just kind of look at the whole person and look at lots of things. And one of the things we look at is depression and anxiety. And very often what we'll find is that people who are ADHD are also a little bit depressed and a little bit anxious, because ADHD is depressing and anxiety provoking, because when you can't get things done like you want to, that kind of gets to you, right? And for a different person, that one person might make them kind of anxious because it's due tomorrow. Yep. The other person, it might make them depressed because it's due tomorrow,
right.
And so, but what we see oftentimes is once they get on the medication, once they get into the rhythm, learn the skills, all that stuff goes way down or goes away.
Yeah.
And so that's a good side effect, because oftentimes they'll go in mistakenly and get treated for the depression or the anxiety, and they miss the ADHD. It gets missed all the time. And so it's out there, and there's some misinformation out there about anything. And there's a lot of misinformation, I think, out there about ADHD, and we don't have time to go into it all. Sure. But it's definitely, I'm convinced it's a real deal. And I was skeptical, and I think it's definitely true. And for people who may watch this or not, if they notice, it's not something you're going to catch at 30.
Yeah.
But if they notice a lifelong history of this kind of stuff that we're talking about, and if that fits for them, they might want to consider taking a deeper look. They can even Google, get online, take a couple of those freebie
tests or quizzes out there,
things, and then see what they think and take it from there.
I wish more people that do resonate maybe with some of those lifelong things. I guess I wondered to myself, what would it have taken for me to investigate this a little bit more earlier, because I think that's probably where a decent amount of people would be. One of them was just the general overall perspective of it. It was I'm a leader, or I'm confident or secure, and I get things done or whatever, and that's not me. There was that perspective, or if it was me, it would feel like I'd have to cover that up a little bit. That was one of my hesitations. I think some people would wrestle with that. I think the other one is just the practical, like, what is my next step? Like, whether the insurance world does or doesn't, or how to even go around finding the right way to go get tested with the right counselor.
Right.
I think for a lot of people, there's just this, that's one more thing, that I got to do or figure out that probably prevents them from taking that step. And I just would say, because of how much it's impacted my life in the positive. I mean, like, I don't want to overstate this, because like I really do believe like Jesus is the ultimate healer, and his ability to rewire and come alongside somebody to help them overcome. I don't think that the medication is the solve all.
Right.
I that's not what I'm advocating. But like, outside of my relationship with Jesus being the thing that has changed me, and the Holy Spirit changing me, this is like, from what the physical world can offer type of thing. This has been one of the most significant impacts on my life. And when I was rounding up the year that I was in last year, 2022, and walking through, discovering like, oh my gosh, like maybe this has been a problem my whole life. And, and then I had some traumatic things taking place that I was trying to figure out how to navigate and lead through. And then the loss of somebody I really cared about, and all of these things were going on. It was like God's saving grace in a way, that like I was able to walk that journey out with you, and be able to have a safe place to discover what kind of solutions could be there. And, I think that that's another big thing around perspective and perception. That's probably the better word. That when I think about counseling or therapy, medication, any of it, especially people in ministry, like, like where I'm at, I know you've been in ministry before, that there can feel like there's a pressure that if I can't struggle with the stuff that other people struggle with, because I'm supposed to lead them. And so whether it's going to get counseling to walk through some grief or some traumatic things, or something from childhood or whatever, or an issue that you've just never been able to overcome, I still see such a resistance in people, and in especially people that are in the ministry space, to feel like I can't do that. I cannot go get that kind of help because of what that could look like, or what it would mean for me. What would you say to that world? You've been able to.
That's a good question, and I don't know if I have a great answer. Because I know I came from
right.
ministry.
You got the perspective
into
of both
ministry
sides.
into becoming a psychologist, and then when I came out, and I remember even coming here to Olympia 30 years ago and saying, "Hey, I'm a Christian psychologist." I remember meeting with pastors say, "Now, isn't that an oxymoron? That you could be a Christian and a psychologist? They don't go together, right? I mean, that there's no way." And that the idea that Christians should never need counseling, that our faith in Christ is enough, and that we shouldn't have any problems. And and on one level, you kind of go, "I buy that," but
sure.
But in reality, you're going, it's real. I mean, I even look at people of faith, Abraham, Moses, David, just for three, had some pretty big problems, did some pretty big things, and
right.
then you go, okay, but we have issues. It's a reality that living by Christian principles, having the Holy Spirit is very helpful to us in our life,
yeah.
and helps us in the mental health arena. But for lots of us, we are going to walk through something in life that we need help with.
Yeah.
And what good psychology does, and I think good psychology has always agreed with biblical principles, is that good psychology can help people walk through those things well with somebody who knows how to walk through it with them.
Yeah.
And yet we do that with faith all the time,
right?
We walk our Christian life out with a pastor, with fellow believers, and it helps us spiritually. Well, emotionally, sometimes we need to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Physically, we do it. We go to the doctors, we get medication, we
right.
get surgeries, and we still believe, and we ask God to help us too, and
right.
He does. And yet, I think we can do the same thing psychologically, is that we can go, hey, I need help in the mental health arena, or I need help with this depression or this anxiety or my marital problem or whatever else, this trauma I had as a child, whatever it is that, or just that something's wrong and I don't know what it is and I'm going to get it checked out.
Yeah.
So I think that process is a reality. And, I think that God uses people in every area of our life to help us.
Yeah.
And so this is just one of those areas.
Yeah.
But I see it too. And, I don't see it near as much as I used to see it.
Sure.
But I'm also in an arena where everybody's coming to me. So I don't see it
sure.
outside of my office where people are saying, yeah, I think I'll pass on that.
Yeah. I wonder if just how things would be different if there was more of a preventative maintenance kind of mentality around even pursuing counseling before the massive repair kind of mentality. Like I wonder like if there was more of a if the stigma or whatever, I think if that could continue to get healthier and healthier for people, that maybe there could be more of a pursuit of like, man, to go and have somebody walk with me in the things I don't even know, maybe.
Right.
Before there is some of those massive breakdowns, I wonder how that could mitigate or prevent some of the bigger blow up things in life.
That it can. I mean, because I think there are people that seek that out before it happens, and and so they get that help. And I think that even like what you're doing, and I think of John Mark Comer and other people who are very open about, hey, I get counseling and I do this and that and the other, and so I think we're seeing more and more people that are open to it. I think there is still a resistance to it. I think that the thing I see sometimes is Christians who will have problems, and there'll be significant problems, maybe a trauma or something they're going through, and they go for the quick fix. They do hey, I'm going to do 2 weeks of hardcore therapy, and that's it, and that's going to fix me, and then I can say, the Lord fixed me, and now we're done, and I don't need any more help. And I'm not saying those intensives aren't good. I think they're great, but very rarely are they enough.
Yeah.
They go in and that's a good jump start. Yeah. But for trauma, big trauma in our life, we're walking that out for a while.
Yeah.
And so there's sin in this world, and we are the receivers of that. And sometimes we go walk through things that are very hurtful to us and cause problems that we need help with.
Yeah.
And so and then sometimes we're, it's weird to think that, some of us are born with mental health stuff, schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Those are basically biological disorders that affect us, and they're rare, but they're there.
But they're there.
And they happen to Christians.
Yeah.
And so, and you can't walk through those without help.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I remember there was a moment when I had started the journey of counseling where I recognized I had a deep desire, and I know people do. I know there's so many people that have this and feel like it's just not possible. And it's kind of this idea that when I thought about my life and I thought about all of the people that I am known by, the reality was, with the journey that I've been on or where I'm at, different things that I've walked through, experienced, a lot of people could relate to, that there was still this sense that like, man, I don't think I'm like really actually known at the bottom of the barrel of my soul by any one person. I have people like my spouse. I have people like pastors and mentors and family members that were a part of my life that know, but like when it comes to like, there's no fear for anything, like a doubt to a sin struggle to something that has happened to somebody, or that the thought that like, there's not a person that has all of like, there's no need or reason to hide anything from. And I didn't have that person until I started realizing what the journey of counseling could be. And I don't know if I can articulate how liberating that process has been for me, to be able to have a space to walk with in that confidentiality, in that safety and security of somebody who's educated and skilled and experienced and trained to walk with somebody through that, while the Lord is doing the work in my heart and my soul that he's doing, to have that place go, well, there is one person that knows all of it, that knows that I got nothing to have any kind of sense of shame in front of, or whatever, or embarrassment or insecurity around. I just wonder how many people live their whole lives without that, or think it's impossible to have. And again, a counselor is not the solution to all of it. And there's some not great counselors.
I think a lot. Yeah, there are, and you got to shop around. And I think that you're hitting on something. I think that can be a great thing about counseling. And I'm not trying to, this is not a commercial for counseling.
No,
but I think that it can be a very positive thing and help us in the journey of health.
Yeah.
And
yes.
And that by coming in to somebody and building trust and openness and transparency and spilling your guts and having somebody who's trained to help in that arena,
yeah,
can put some of those pieces together and help in the process of healing.
Yeah.
And I think that, why not for all of us? I want to be the same way. I want to be as healthy as I can be in every area.
Yes.
And so this mental health area is an area that I've had to work on too, to go like, hey, I believe lies that aren't true. I've had things in my life that I struggle with or believe that have hurt my life. And then you find out that, oh, this trauma has happened, and work on that, and all that whole process to where life is considerably better. Why not go through that process rather than struggle and be in pain and agony and fake it, hide it, lie about it, whatever, and not really be real in it. So it's scary.
Yeah, I would say that what you
scary.
said, because your question that you were using is why not? That was going to be I know for me, and I know for a lot of people, what that why not is because of fear. It is a unknown place to go that most people have never been before, and the thought of the rejection or the whatever that could be on the other side of that level of vulnerability and honesty. Right. It just isn't, it's not there. It doesn't really exist, And so I know that was the bigger thing for me. There was even that season where I wrestled for the first few months of doing counseling, where I was like, I don't want to let this guy down. There was a moment where, and it was probably when I really started stepping into the ADHD world and working on the medication stuff and figuring that out and continuing to go to counseling, where I finally hit a point where I was like, to your point, if this could help me be healthier, and like to some degree, what a irresponsible thing for me to not do for my own life, for my relationship with the Lord, for my wife, for my kids, for my church, the people I'm going to be, shepherding, to not do everything that I could do to be as healthy as I could be. And whether it was the journey of taking medication for ADHD, or really, like I get into the absolute bottom barrel of my soul with somebody that I'd never had that level of depth of honesty and transparency before. It does help you get healthier. And now I've been able to bring a healthier husband to the table, and dad to the table, and pastor to the table. I mean, like, I look back at the last year and a half of where the Lord has taken me, and I go, well, I wouldn't be sitting here. That's for darn sure. I mean, no shot. I would not, if I hadn't started going to counseling and journeying that. I mean, there's no shot. COVID and all the stuff I was going through, it was like, I was hanging on, and my fear of man, don't want to disappoint people, was the thing probably hanging on to me more than I was hanging on to even the Lord during that. So I know that I probably wouldn't still be in this kind of environment in a healthy place. I would have probably had to hang it up for a while. And so I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that there are men and women like yourself who have given their life to walking out the sacrifice and the investment and the education and the hours and hours and hours of journeying with people and, helping absorb and listen to very difficult things and not giving up on that space, so that at 30, I think I got in there at 31, 32, I could show up and my whole life could be changed, so that it could still be going in the direction that I think the Lord has had for it, and can be healthier and more impactful than where I was at. And so, man, thank you on just a personal level. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be sitting here. I could see it. I could see the trajectory of where that world was going. Had it not been for the just massive gear shift of, no, you're going to do this every other week for a long time and really be known and really press into this. And I just, on a personal, the cameras or mics weren't a thing, whatever. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's been, and truthfully, it's been an honor for me as well. And that's one of the things I love about my job. I get to work with really great people, and the honor of walking with people through things is joyful, but also I learned something along the way too.
Yeah.
And it's helpful to me as well. So, thank you for those words, kind words, but, it's been a pleasure for me as well.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up the convo for today, as the whole why of the podcast that I'm doing all this is, it's like I have a little sign right here, freed up to build up. I mean, that's been my why from January of this year. Like the Lord gave me that word. Like that's part of what I want to have these conversations for, is so people would listen, and whatever's holding them back, somehow, some way they could hear something, and the Lord could use it to help get them freed up from whatever that is holding them back, so they could build up who they were made to be and step into that space more and more. And I'm doing that in this year more than I probably ever have. When you think about your life, you think about maybe even where you are at this season, going into, the years where you're managing and leading on a higher level maybe than ever before, and maybe you have the ability to do, just you have more. I mean, you're not any less busy, but you've built up some things, but you're at a point in your life now where you've got future in front of you and different things that maybe dreams or things God's put in your heart. But when you think about something in the past or right now where you're at in this season that's held you back, that you're learning, you have overcome, or you're learning to overcome to be who you were made to be, like, what does that look like right now? How would you encourage somebody with part of that story from you, even if it's like present day, maybe you haven't fully, seen the answer yet?
You mean like what's the stuff I have?
Well,
the stuff that I struggle with or struggled with, or
more so like there. What's a piece? I think that sometimes people think that the struggle stops at some point.
Yeah.
Right. And for all the perspective or all the perception would be, I mean, here's a guy who's extremely successful in a business that he's built up and poured his heart and soul into and sacrificed a lot for 30 plus years, on top of education, on different things that you've navigated. And yet there's still seasons of things God's, stretching in you that maybe you never hit a wall like this in your other seasons of life, but you are now in this season, and you're learning how to overcome, different pieces. Is there anything in this season of Dr. Jeff Wagaman's life that you're like, man, yeah, I'm growing in an area that I'm being stretched or something?
Yeah,
does that make sense?
It's a good question. I think that for one, I'm at this age, I feel like I'm healthier emotionally than I've ever been in my life. I also feel I'm the best boss I've ever been in my life.
That's awesome.
And so I feel like I don't want to retire, because I get to this place and go like, no, I'm going to quit.
Right.
It's like I'm the best boss I've ever been, and I'm going to say, okay, now I'm done.
Right.
But one thing I was just thinking about this, and I was thinking, because I think there's God's part and our part in this journey of health.
Yeah.
And I've seen God in my life work in me, on me, others speaking to me towards health and helping me in that process. The Holy Spirit, the Word, but other people too, in walking in whatever area I need to grow in. And then I think there's our part where we work at it too.
Right.
And finding that balance, I don't know what that balance is. I just think it's probably more us surrendering sometimes and God doing the work. But there is our part in this process of getting healthy too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I've worked really hard at trying to be healthy. Sometimes that's where I go first rather than going to God. But one thing I've seen is God in that journey of my issues. He's working on them with me too. Now, I've gone to counseling in some of those areas as well. But one area I see just recently would be the area of trust. And I went through some things as a young kid that were pretty traumatic. And God has used those things in my practice, but has also used those things to go, I can relate to people because of when they come in and they're having issues with trauma or issues with their thinking or behaving in ways that don't fit their values. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And so I went through that trauma. And one of the things that burned into me in that trauma was don't trust. And I think that don't trust was anybody.
Yeah.
Don't trust anybody. Don't trust God. Don't trust people in authority. Don't trust people, period. And I went through life. You wouldn't see it on the outside.
Sure.
But I went through life and I don't trust you. And so that's how I went. And God has worked in me to where now I'm in a point in my life, and it's been a journey for sure. And I still think there might be a little more.
Yeah.
But where he's showed me over and over and over that I can trust him. And just last week, one other little event where I go, oh Lord, you're showing me I can trust you again. And he's been very patient. But in that journey, learning to trust people, learning to have good quality friendships where I'm transparent and open and honest, and relationships with other people, wife, children, all that stuff. So that would be an area that I think that I just saw this week. God, you're still working with me on that area, because when something happens, anything goes wrong, rather than run to God, my tendency is to go, okay, what can I do about this?
Right.
What can I do to fix this? And I think he's constantly trying to help me learn that you trust me on this one. So I see that.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, that's so good, man. Thank you. Thanks for sharing and the authenticity, and it's a blessing to have a relationship, and for your I want to affirm, although I haven't known you for all of the years that you've been in this world. You just mentioned being the healthiest you've been, and maybe the best boss that you've ever been. That's what I'm seeing coming out of you, and so I think that it's blessing a lot of people in this season. That you're able, in the later years of the harvest of your life, that the fruit is really good, and for the people getting to receive that from you. So, man, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it a lot.
Excited.
My pleasure.
Yeah, excited to continue to have a relationship and grow and learn, and I know people are listening to this is going to be impactful and encouraging to them. So, with that, everybody listening, thanks for joining us, and until next time, see you later.